Hey there. Hope you guys are doing well. My name is Tammy. I'm your mentoring guide on this journey through 31 days of essential oils, and we are at day 13. Wow, 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 wow. Anyway, hope you're getting some information out of this that's beneficial to you. And if not, let me know if there's any questions you have. By all means, I do not mean to poo-poo any of the oils, although they do have both positive and negative. That's just the way nature is. It's all in balance, right? And so today I want to talk a little bit about petitgrain. Petitgrain, also the botanical name is Citrus aurantium, is what am I trying to say? It comes from the leaves of this tree. The reason I'm saying this is because there's different Citrus aurantiums, and they're distilled from different parts of the plant. Neroli comes from the flower, petitgrain comes from the leaves, and bitter orange actually comes from the fruit itself. So that's it with it. So they all have different properties because they're coming from different parts of the plant. In the case of petitgrain, it is exceptional with helping to. It's exceptional. I've used it quite often with blood pressure. And so let me just back up a minute. If you're new and this is your first time here, welcome. I'm providing information on essential oils on a daily basis for the next, well, now for the next couple of weeks, but for 31 days straight of, and it's based on 30 years of study, practice, application, modification based on my own experiences. So what you're getting here is how I've used them and my perspective of them. And I follow up with a blog, which has been coming out a couple days after these videos are posting, simply because there's just a lot of information that I really want to share with you. My ultimate goal is for people to get the most out of the oils. That's really what this is, because it almost hurts to hear people go, well, I've tried essential oils and I didn't get anything out of it, or they really didn't do any good, or I had this reaction, and so forth. So when I talk like I do, it's really to be informative so that we can begin to make different decisions. And like I said, with petitgrain, I've used it a lot with blood pressure issues, especially if somebody's been taking blood pressure medication. It's very beneficial for cardiovascular. I have personally, used it also with digestive issues, especially. I love it for spasms. It's a great spasmolytic oil. Yeah, so those were a couple of really good reasons. And the other thing is also very helpful in the area of anxiety. Now, the thing about petitgrain is it actually stimulates and influences the production of serotonin. So it's very beneficial in the digestive system, since that's where 90% of our serotonin is produced. So again, using petitgrain along for the digestive system, especially more like nervous indigestion, where you just have a nervous stomach and you may have pain and so forth. From the spasming, a little bit of petitgrain on the tummy is beautiful for relieving that. Now, that said, we want to be careful because, as I mentioned, it does influence serotonin levels. So we don't want to, if you're prone to migraines, don't use petitgrain, because migraines are oftentimes as a result of a serotonin spike. And so if you use this on a regular basis, it's the possibility of you triggering a migraine is there. So we don't want to do that. Now, the fact is that the oils, because they are a collection of components, that means there's a number of constituents. There's a synergy that really works with the whole system. But at the same time, if we're only using a single oil, the potential for creating fluctuations is there. So again, this is a really good reason why we want to blend it with other ones, depending on what's going on with your body. But in the meantime, if you're, like I said, if you're prone to migraines, then please avoid using petitgrain for that reason. There will be other ways that you'll get here in a couple of weeks as to how you might be able to use something else, or supplement it with something that really comes into the blending. Because if we're having an oil that has a very specific influence on a particular chemical, it really becomes necessary to, how do I want to say, balance that out, be able to support the system to prevent a potential spike. Okay, now in this case, we have talked about ginger root, so combining the two may be beneficial, but again, it depends on your system. And so that's where I kind of want to I help people actually with the blending process. Now, so beyond spasms and like I said, nervous indigestion, um, and it really comes down to an anxiety. I mean, I get that serotonin is generally related to depression, but truthfully, SSRIs, or antidepressants, are oftentimes prescribed for anxiety. So serotonin, truthfully, is actually indicated or can be indicated in anxiety. Which chemical is causing the anxiety? If anxiety is the issue, it's really difficult to say. I actually did a recent post on my ultimate guide that talks about the chemistry of anxiety. And there's a whole number of different chemicals that are involved. And I actually make a suggestion over there regarding potential oils to use if anxiety is a constant issue. So again, if you have maybe a bout of anxiety, maybe you've just had kind of a really, really stressful day, you think, using it, Petitgrain on that might be very helpful for you. You will get, I mean, I guarantee you'll feel a lot better. I mean, I particularly love Petitgrain, but I have to tell you that I have to be really careful with it, even with myself, because part of it is, as I mentioned, it does influence the effect of serotonin in the gut. And the truth is if we have, and if serotonin, if the serotonin imbalance becomes such that it can be, how do I want to say this, lead to IBS-like symptoms. So it could potentially create constipation, or it could potentially create very loose bowels, or just, so essentially a sluggishness. And so you have this variation in consistency in the bowels. And I've actually had this very experience when it came to using Petitgrain for way too long. I mean, like I said, I totally digged the aroma, but I wasn't paying attention to how long I'd been using it. And I'm not talking about like months. I might have been using it just for a couple of weeks and ended up with bowel issues. And truthfully, I was born anxious. I've had IBS-like symptoms since I was about 4 or 5. And so I have to be really, really careful. And that's a really good example of how when the oils do influence these chemicals, we can actually trigger other symptoms. And this is one of the reasons why people go, well, see, they don't work for me. Look what just happened. So understanding, I totally advocate for having a nice assortment of individual oils and the single notes, not blends. I do not condone, I don't recommend really buying pre-made blends unless they have, and the reason for that, if you haven't seen this other video about me not wanting to be considered a naysayer, when we talk about, like, say, a digestive blend, the fact is that an oil has more than just one quality to it, meaning it does more than just work on the digestive system. And then how it affects the digestive system does vary. So just calling an oil a digestive oil is not good. I mean, we want to understand that there's other properties and what all else are we doing. And in the case of Petitgrain, its influence on the digestive system really has more to do with serotonin and realizing the importance of how we are affecting these chemicals. And so having an assortment of single note oils on hand so that you can even potentially use different oils, like maybe 3 or 4 oils today, and use maybe 3 or 4, change it up a little bit tomorrow, and then change it up a little bit after that. Keep in mind, the body's constantly adapting to the environment. We are a chemistry lab, you guys, which means the chemistry is constantly changing depending on what our needs are, what our physical needs are. It's not what we think we need, it's what the body is picking up on. It's the messages coming in. So sticking with the same thing on a regular basis is going to lead to an imbalance, so to speak. I prefer to use the word instability. So if we start to learn how to modulate the way we're using these oils on a daily basis, we don't run into IBS-like symptoms. We don't run into adversely causing anxiety when we're actually trying to eliminate anxiety. You see what I'm saying? We're actually working with the system. And it takes a little bit of getting to know this, what's going on with your system, and really kind of almost like keeping a diary, if you will, of how you feel today after you use these oils, and be just really paying close attention and really getting to know your oils and how they can help. Because The fact is the neurochemistry, it's virtually impossible to tell where your body is going to be on any given day. So I always recommend, you know, avoiding the oils that are known to have a direct influence on a specific chemical, such as estrogen, such as serotonin. There's no reason in the world why we can't use it, from time to time. But on a regular basis, it's not advisable because you're influencing a very specific chemical. And just because we think that chemical is the problem, it's going to lead to other problems because the whole system has to adjust. It must accommodate what you're doing to it or what the messages that are coming in. So when we have these oils that have this very specific influence on the system, it's best to include them maybe a few times a month, maybe, depending on the oil. Okay. In the case of Petitgrain, maybe a couple of times a month. Case of star anise, once in a blue moon, So if you haven't seen the video, that's what I was saying at that one. So I just wanted to put that out there. I look forward to writing about Petitgrain because, like I said, it's one of my favorite aromas. And hopefully I can just make sure that you get even more really cool information on this oil. All right, you guys take care and thanks for being here.